summer when I was a child. For like 16 summers, I came out to Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is very near and dear to my heart. So instead of going straight to California, I just kind of stopped in Madison for 2 months, did the program, and continued home from Barcelona. From graduating from WTTP, I worked at a small adult language school, mostly Spanish school in Sacramento. They had a small ESL program, which I was doing some part-time teaching, and then I ended up taking over the program for 2 years, and I loved the job, and I doubled the student population in the ESL program. Wow. So that was really cool. And in 2016, in February, March, my husband was offered a job in Mexico City, an international job, and I said, the only reason I will move abroad is if like one of us has an opportunity, a job opportunity, and I knew that I would have lots of opportunities as an English teacher in Mexico City, so we packed up everything, sold a bunch of stuff, and moved to Mexico City. We've been there for almost a year and a half. It's been lots of bumps and highs and lows, and it's been pretty crazy, but we really love it, and we plan on staying there for a while. So I'll continue. So a lot of people ask me, what's it like living in Mexico? What do you guys think of? I mean, when you hear that, tell me the truth. Food, okay? Anybody else? Destination. Food, okay. Anything else? Tourism. Really, these are all very positive. This is great. You don't have to be PC. It's okay. No, a lot of people think of
worried about the safety.
Safety,
yeah.
Traffic, pollution. Yeah. So there are 25 million people that live in Mexico City. It's one of the most populated cities in the world. So a lot of the negative things that come with that, but a lot of positive things as well, with all those people and all those minds together, right? First of all, the cost of living, what is my breakdown of living expenses? Well, it's considerably lower than living in California. I would say about at least a quarter or a third of what we were paying to live in California. In terms of like my housing, I'll just give you an example of housing. We were living in a really trendy neighborhood in Mexico City when we first moved. We were paying around $900 to $1,000 for our apartment, right?
Depending on the dollar peso
how the dollar
fluctuation.
peso fluctuation was. We recently moved to a more middle-class Mexican neighborhood, and we are paying half. We're paying $475 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. So that kind of gives you an idea. And we have our own personal apartment, whereas some of you might be sharing in a house, so it will be considerably cheaper. Safety, a lot of people ask me about safety. It is, the country's capital is one of the safest areas in Mexico, mostly because the president lives there, and there's just added security on every corner. Just because, it's like Washington, D.C., right? You can think of Mexico City as kind of the same in terms of having lots of added security in the city. Climate, most homes do not have central heating and air, meaning the climate is great. Highs in the mid 70s most days, lows in the high 50s all year round. So we love that. You'll never get bored in Mexico City. There's always weekly, monthly, yearly events going on. I think there's a marathon every weekend, pretty much, going on in the city. So we're never bored. And also Mexico City, the international airport is what I call the kind of door to the rest of Latin America. I mean, to go to Guatemala, South America, flights are considerably cheaper and shorter than coming from the States. So even if you're living in Mexico City and you just want to get out of the city, it's so affordable and accessible, right? And these are all photos I've taken in Mexico City, just kind of showing you the different parts of it. So let's continue. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about a blog post that I wrote called Finding an English Teaching Job in Mexico City. My blog is La Mariposa Vagabunda, which is the wandering butterfly, basically in Spanish. I'm going to give you bits and pieces of the blog, but I encourage you to go back to it and you can read it in detail because it does have very specific details in it that I may not say during the presentation. Okay, so let's go to some common questions answered. Can I make a living teaching English in Mexico City? The answer is yes. Teachers are offered very affordable or very good wages in Mexico City and many parts of Mexico. And there's plenty of work to go around. Full-time salaries, depending on where the peso is, are between 17,000 and 20,000 pesos, which is roughly around $950 to $1,100 a month, which is pretty good when you think about it's Latin America. You will have make a decent living wage, but it may be tricky to save because $950 will get you through the month. You can pay your rent, eat, and all those good things, but having kind of extra spending money is difficult, especially if you're working full time because you're going to work kind of long hours. So that's also something to consider. That's a big reason why many teachers will teach private classes on the side to make up that extra kind of spending money.
When you say full time, what are the hours?
Full time, it really depends. I would say like 7 to 4 or 5, about, yeah. And that's teaching at an elementary school, for example, which are pretty much the only full-time jobs you're going to find in Mexico City, are teaching children normally. Next question, do I need a TESOL certification to find a job? So unfortunately for people who, like us, who have earned our TEFL certification, it's a little frustrating because they will give jobs. Schools, private schools, business schools will hire a native English speaker with a college education instead of having a TEFL, or does that make sense? So they'll hire people without TEFL, although these jobs are normally the lowest paying. My recommendation is to apply to schools that require a TEFL because you know that they have a higher caliber of education and they pay better normally. But know that there are lots of schools that will hire any native speaker with a college degree, which is unfortunate, right? And these are normally private kind of adult language schools or business English schools that have kind of a curriculum. Let's see, was I missing anything else about that? Great. I was going to tell a story that, I did work for an adult language school, business school for a little while, and they interviewed me one day, they hired me that day, they gave me the book, and they said, good luck, your class is tomorrow at 7, right? And luckily I had a great training here at Wesley, and I was totally prepared for that situation, but I do imagine, I wonder about these people who have no teaching experience, who are totally thrown into situations like that. And also the students, what kind of education they're getting, right? Okay, moving on. How many questions answered? How fast can I find a job once I'm settled in Mexico City? Or can I find one beforehand? We're going to talk about that a little bit. But good news is you can find a job pretty fast in Mexico City. If you are in the right place at the right time, you could find it in a week. But I would say on average a month before you find something part-time, not normally full-time, but something part-time to get you going. Know that your first job offer may not be the best job, and you might have to kind of try out various schools before you find one that fits. A tip I have is to have a little bit of padding in your savings account before you move to Mexico City, because you don't want to be strapped for cash and having to take the first job offered to you, right? And I was going to say this later in the presentation, but I'll just say it now, that I recommend, it may sound crazy, but I recommend moving to Mexico City first if you've decided on that, and then start looking for a job. Unless you're applying for at a teaching college, like a teaching fair where they're recruiting teachers for their elementary schools and things like that. If you're just kind of looking to get your foot in the door in Mexico City, I recommend like living there because they do want to see your face in interviews. It's very rare that you'll get an interview via Skype or a phone call. Just a bit, I guess the market is a bit more casual than that, and they want like that interaction with you in person, right? Also do your research on the schools that you're applying for in terms of part-time work. Make sure that the school is reputable, and if you can talk to current or previous teachers before accepting a part-time job, that would be ideal, although we don't always have that luxury. You know, there can be some shady private schools sometimes, you know, offering adult conversation classes, or, you know, so you just have to be careful. And if you are ever going to move to Mexico City, just give me a call and I'll make sure that nobody puts one over you. But it's great learning experience because it happened to me. So, all right, let's move on. And please raise your hand if you have any questions. I'm happy to stop. Well, most schools sponsor a work visa, unless you're accepting a full-time position. The answer is normally no. If it's a part-time job, they normally just kind of pay you in cash, and that's kind of how the system works in Mexico City, and most parts of Mexico, I assume. So the whole idea of like working under the table, we'll say working as an independent contractor, is what most teachers do in Mexico City during the first 6 months to a year, where they're really looking for a full-time job that's going to sponsor their work visa. But that's hard to find, and it's almost impossible to find before you get to the city. Again, unless you're going through like a hiring fair for like the American school, for example, it's going to be very difficult to be sponsored before you go. So, so yes, the first 6 months to a year, it's very common to work as an independent contractor, and you'll be paid in cash weekly, bi-weekly for the classes that you teach, and that's pretty much it. And that's kind of how the whole country works, is how the whole city works. I mean, I mentioned taco stands here because on every corner you see operating family taco stands on every corner, and I asked myself, are these people like reporting everything they earn? I mean, are they reporting everything they earn, or it's just kind of how the country works, and you know, but all the money that you're making, the services that you're bringing to Mexico in terms of English services, and then you're making that money and you're pumping it back into the economy because you're spending all that money all in the city. So I think it creates like a positive, you know, flow in a way, if you want to think about it that way. I'm just being totally honest with you guys. And the great thing about Mexico is your U.S. passport on a tourist visa, you can be there for 6 months at a time without having to leave the country, right? I have successfully gotten a work visa when I worked for elementary school, so it is possible. It is a bit of a headache, but it is possible. It just took some time to like find the right job, right? Anything else? Okay. Continuing. What details should I factor into accepting a position? Obviously pay. That fluctuates with the peso. Again, if you're in Mexico City or in Mexico, just send me a message and I can kind of tell you what you should look for. Travel time is a huge factor from your house to your work. How long am I in public transportation, or it does factor in. Most people's a normal, you know, Mexican business person, their normal average travel time to get to work every day is 1.5 hours. So 3 hours of commuting every day is like normal for them. That's not normal for me, and I will never accept a job that's 1.5 hours away from my house. It's just not worth it, right? So just to keep that in mind. Also, your schedule. Are they offering you a couple hours a week, a couple classes, a whole, you know, many times a week? Sometimes it's better to accept to decline a part-time job and then to wait for that fuller schedule or a full-time job, right? Okay, moving on. What types of jobs are out there and where should you start looking? So number one is Craigslist, actually. There's a lot of private and franchise schools and even private students that are looking for teachers and business English schools on Craigslist. It's a great place to start, and normally you can make more money through these jobs, these part-time jobs. Teaching at an elementary school is great. They offer stable income, paid holidays, vacation time during Christmas and the summer. You do tend to work longer hours in terms of, just at any elementary school you're working like longer hours. What else was I gonna say? And they will sponsor a visa, a work visa. Subbing in elementary schools, there are a couple schools like the American School, and then the other one was the Latin American, I'm forgetting the name right now. Teachers of Latin America, it's a website, and also they operate in Mexico City. They also have a subbing program. It's a great way to get your foot in the door at certain schools that you want to teach at, or just like try out a variety of different schools. A lot of times the daily rate is kind of low, so they'll pay you like a daily rate to come sub. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and the cons, right? And lastly, advertising your teaching services on your own as a private teacher. You're definitely going to have a lot higher hourly salary doing it this way. Although it can be difficult to find, reliable students. So you kind of want to build a student base, a client base beforehand. And by the way, I have done all of these, all of them. I've tried all of them. Currently I'm teaching private classes. So I've gone through all of these options and I've ended up teaching private classes. Okay, almost to the end here. So what am I doing now in Mexico City, because I'm not teaching full time? So like I said, I'm a private English teacher. I've built up I've met a lot of people in Mexico City that want private classes, so I've kind of built that client base. That took me some time, but I'm able to make my own schedule and charge kind of whatever I want. I'm doing some freelance writing on the side for some magazines. I'm starting a food tour company. I'm moving my food tours soon in the local markets. I'm working for my friend's boutique travel company in Sacramento called The Heart of Travel. She'll send me groups to Mexico City and I'll guide them around the city. And then I'm also starting a website called sustainablemexicocity.org. It's going to be kind of a hub of, organic markets, organic grocery stores, all the cool sustainable things that are going on in Mexico City. So what I hope this shows you is that Mexico City is exploding with opportunity. And I mean, if maybe you're not really interested in teaching children, because that's normally where you're going to find a full-time job, is teaching in an elementary school. This just shows you that you can do private teaching on the side and do so much more, and have, be paying much less in your, monthly expenses, and like you have more time for yourself and to be able to work on these projects, because I wouldn't be able to do this back in California, because I would be working to pay my rent, to do all these things, right? So there's lots of opportunity in Mexico City, and I think in all over Mexico. And here are some links I found useful. I can send you this PowerPoint.
That'd be great.
So you have them. Also, all of these are listed on the blog post, so you can access them there as well. But there's Montessori schools, the American School Foundation is there. And this teacher's Latin America hiring fair that they do every spring is really useful. For those who are interested in teaching in an elementary school, I highly recommend that you kind of move to Mexico City in the spring, because they have all the elementary schools are looking to fill their positions for August, to start in August, and they want to have face-to-face interviews with teachers. So it's kind of like you could go there for the month of April or May and get that job secured. Spend the summer traveling through the Yucatan and Oaxaca or wherever you want to go, and then start your full-time job in August. That's my recommendation. And just to kind of close, Mexico in general is a wonderful place to teach English. I feel like right now there's so many, China is really hitting the job market, trying to get you to go to China, which is a great option as well. But I think people are forgetting about Mexico. Maybe Latin America and all that it has to offer. The language, the food, just the culture, the dancing, it's just so rich with culture, and it's lovely. And Mexico City is like an urban metropolis that I kind of fell in love with, because that's my personality. I have that entrepreneurial spirit, right? And it's allowed me to do all the projects I'm doing. But maybe you want to be by the beach. So Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, you can teach English anywhere in Mexico. So I really urge you to kind of research those areas, and send me an email if you want my input on those places. If Mexico City sounds at all interesting, if it intrigues you, come and visit for a week or two. Give me a call, and I'll set up some things for you to see different parts and kind of learn about the neighborhoods before you actually make your decision, right? Because we were kind of thrown into Mexico City. It took us a while to see the beauty and everything, but there's so much going on. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I will open it up to the floor